Salvete, mihi nomen est Stella et hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 232 for April MMXXIII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, it's actually a miracle that I'm here with us today because my computer, my podcasting computer of 13 years, passed away last month. And with it, it has taken 13 years of Batgirl the Oracle files. It
Oh
has
no.
taken nearly 8 years of required reading files, and it took all of the files of Dear Reader. The good thing about having Tom is that he can send me some stuff, and I might have some backups of BTO, but I'm scared to see what those backups are because it'd be really sad. And then Dear Reader, I just have nothing. And the worst, I think, is really the images because I had basically templates for everything. And so it's like starting from scratch. So I asked Tom, are you going to be upset if the images look a little different? And he said no. So that's okay. But I am pretty bummed about Dear Reader. I think maybe I'm still in shock, maybe because I'm still in the trauma. I haven't felt it yet because I'm dealing with it okay. But yes, so the previous episode, I think there was some audio stuff where I was trying silence on the new Audacity, which just looks really weird. And I think it was like cutting off some things. So I'll try to do better this time. But that was basically why. That was the quickest edit job I ever did. But we have resurrected like Stephanie Brown in the previous issue of Batgirls. And this is a huge Stephanie Brown episode of Batgirl the Oracle. And I thought, wouldn't it be fitting to have the greatest Stephanie Brown apologist there is on the socials, Ian Prime, aka Ian Miller? Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure to have you. And luckily, this was in advance. I kind of knew like a couple months out and said, hey, would you want to do this? Because I saw that Cass is going to be in a Robin book and Babs is going to kind of be in there. And then all of that, I'm like, oh, wow. So we're getting there where it's her super lengthy tenure as Robin. Now, before I came on here, Ian wanted me to come close to the camera just so everyone knows that I don't have bloodshot eyes because we are recording on April 20th, 420. I think at one point I knew why it was like the official marijuana day, but I don't remember anymore. So no bloodshot eyes, we're going to be okay. And I was thinking to myself, which Bat family member would most likely smoke marijuana or have an edible if it were legalized in Gotham? And to be honest, I think it'd be Stephanie Brown. And because Stephanie Brown would do it, absolutely Cassandra Cain would do it. Absolutely. Donovan, you come at me with if you so desire. So I'll put that down. So if, listeners out there, if you feel like there's someone else, because thinking of everyone else is like super straight laced. Maybe Babs would take an edible. I don't know, but Batman definitely wouldn't. Damian definitely wouldn't.
Damien
Um,
might for like a vision quest.
that's true, maybe. Yeah. I don't
The
know.
one thing I
Maybe,
will
yeah.
say about Steph is that her mother's an addict, so I think she might not because of that.
Oh, that is true. Yeah, she might go extreme and away from that. Yeah. But is she an addict in this current universe with
I
Rebirth,
mean, she's only
etc.?
showed up like 3 times in the current universe, so we
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. So, I don't know if Tim and Bernard or Bernard are
I think
hanging out.
Bernard definitely would.
Yeah.
Um,
But Tim might be too straight ways. But anyways, yeah, it was kind of a fun little thing of thinking, oh, who would, if it were legal. See, I made it very concrete and all of that. So we'll move on. So of course, I said my computer died. So you might be thinking, what has been giving me joy? So we'll move on to the Find Your Joy segment, aka Shag's Mac and Cheese of Comfort and Joy. Ian, I'll start with you. Is there anything that currently has been giving you happiness in these sometimes difficult times?
I have been watching The Mandalorian, and
Ooh.
I really liked Bo-Katan's religious journey in this season. I actually have not, I still haven't watched Rebels. We've talked about that on email. Um, but I like Katie Sackhoff, and I really like the way she sort of comes from she's like an ex-Catholic in some ways, in that she like grew up with all these rituals, but she didn't think they meant anything. But then she sees something. I'm going to not be very spoilery if people haven't seen it, but she sees something in the early part of the show, and she goes on a huge religious journey. And I found that very, honestly, I thought it was very thoughtful and emotional. I
Yeah.
liked that.
I think the first few episodes of the season, I really wasn't sure where it was going. And then when you
Well, the first
first
episode was
see,
terrible.
then when you see Bo-Katan just hanging out, basically like Batman and being very, I don't know, curmudgeon-y and woe is
All
me.
her
I was
friends
like,
left her. She was
what's going?
sad.
I know, but how did she know that he was? There was like a funny reel that I saw where how did she know? And she was probably doing something else in pajamas, and then she heard Mando come, and then she ran into the throne room and
Quickly got her
threw
armor
herself
on.
in. Yes, but yeah, I have loved seeing all of that and her bringing all the people together. And the season finale I thought was amazing. I really loved. I would say that I loved her more than, this might be sacrilege, more than Mando and Grogu in this
I mean,
particular
I still
season.
love Mando and Grogu. I'm not saying I
Yes.
don't love them, but like Bo's journey was like, I thought it was just really thoughtfully written, and that drew me in. And as I said, I really like Katie Sackhoff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting going from her being like, you guys are fanatics to actually, because she's been cleansed in the water, becoming and following the way, and then hesitant when the armorer asked her to remove her helmet. I was like, wow, this is a big change. So yeah, I thought that was great. It's funny, I actually interviewed Katie Sackhoff way back when because she was Sarah Essen in the Batman Year One
Oh,
direct to
that's
video
right.
film, and this was like before I even knew who Katie Sackhoff was. So now it's just funny to think like I spoke with her. Starbuck, and because then later I watched Get Battlestar Galactica and all of this, of course. So yes, I would agree that that's been great. I do recommend Rebels. You've seen Clone Wars?
I've only seen about two seasons,
Oh, okay. Because
and
if
not
you
in
can't,
order.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I know the animation is not, that's tough to get into. I
I
personally
actually
don't
really
like.
like the animation of
Okay.
Clone Wars. I don't like the animation of Rebels, but
Oh, yeah.
um, it's just, I don't know. I watched a couple episodes in the middle, and I was just not super impressed. I didn't think they were as thoughtful. So
Sure.
I know there's a lot of good, thoughtful stuff in there, and I did watch a lot of the last season. No, so it's not the last season anymore, but it was the last season when I watched it,
Hmm.
where Ahsoka, is accused of being.
Right.
Is she accused of murder or just like being a traitor?
A
She's accused of
traitor.
something, and so she has to
Yeah.
run away. So I watched that,
Yep.
and I watched the episodes where the clone, the chip plot. I watched that,
Right.
but I didn't see the new seasons after that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then Ezra, of course, I don't really care for him. But I mean, if you're gonna watch Ahsoka, then you might want to watch Rebels so you at least
Or
see
I could just
the sequel.
continue watching stuff without watching the background and see how it works.
You could potentially, but that's not proper nerdy behavior. So you might get
Or is
canceled.
it?
I don't know. For me, my find my joy segment, or sorry, for me, my find my joy was last Saturday. I went to see Ali and AJ, which is the second time that I saw them. I saw them last spring. Remember, I really loved it. And this is their tour for their latest album with Love Rum. And I was going back and forth whether I should do the VIP experience, which involves seeing a sound check and getting to meet them and get a picture with them. And it was like the week coming. I'm like, you know what? This is like once in a lifetime. Let's just do it. So I shelled out some extra cash and did the VIP, and it was just amazing. They're just lovely human beings. Got to talk with them just like very quickly, was praising them, and just ever so thankful for their creativity and their beautiful relationship, and their advocacy of different peoples and their activism. So that was great. And then the whole show was amazing. It was probably one of the best, if not the best concert that I've been to. 2 hours of their music. They play the entire album, plus, of course, all of their or some of their other stuff. And their transitions were so tight. It's not like normally the musicians might play one song, stop and have a chat, or a couple songs, stop and have a chat. It was like nonstop practically the entire time. And the transitions were just going from one song to another. And some songs you wouldn't expect to connect really well. Some they changed the tempo. So maybe something that you knew really well was fast, it slowed down. So it was just very great. And they advocated for gun control because they survived a mass shooting last year in Tennessee. Their tour bus got shot up and 6 people died in that particular thing. And I bring that up mainly because we're going to be talking about gun control in the second half of this particular episode. So I guess trigger warning if you are a Second Amendment proponent. So I think we're going to get into it now. So this is kind of a choose your own adventure type first half, where we are going to look at the super duper long tenure of Stephanie Brown as Robin, which happens to be what, a 60 pages worth. I mean, that's pretty long. That's almost, half of a
Every time
young
you say
adult
this,
novel.
it's a knife to my heart.
But I'm going to be hopping around. So just follow us along. And we are going to focus more on the Batgirl issues, but it is relevant to have Steph as Robin and looking at these issues. So we'll start with Robin 126, the cover date, July 2004, and the publisher's synopsis. First appearance of Stephanie Brown. There it is, as Robin. Tim Drake has relinquished the cape and mask. Now Batman must name a successor, and his new Robin isn't a boy wonder at all. The girl wonder makes her startling debut. Okay, so I will say that the shipping in this is a bit nuts because it was nice to have some shipping with Tim and Steph. I feel like I don't see it very often because I'm very hop on, hop off with Robin whenever Babs is in there. But then you've got Tim kissing other girls and going out with other girls. And really, only one of these can be explained because that girl forced herself upon him. And then we also have Bernard. Bernard is in this issue. There's so much going on, but this is like pre.
Bernard is shipping himself with Tim's stepmom.
I know, isn't that weird? And I was actually looking up because I thought, isn't this Tim's now boyfriend? And so I looked up Bernard, and then the current writer of this said he never intended Bernard to be or Tim to be bisexual. It's like, well, you may not have intended it, but it is what it is. So got to go with it. So we've got the War Journal. So we're kind of setting some things up here, unfortunately. We're going to be getting into the war games. So here's a question for you. Are you ready for this? Okay. Do you feel like both Stephanie and Batman have the wrong reasons in mind for becoming Batman and Robin? The fact that they're sort of both involving Tim.
So that is an excellent question. And I mentioned this a little before. There is an issue of Wizard magazine.
Look at that handsome guy.
I know, he's great. Best Spider-Man. Where Stephanie actually fights the Penguin, which we'll see more of in the Batgirl issue. But Penguin just disrespects Spoiler. She's able to fight him off, but she's not able to defeat him, and he just mocks her mercilessly. And so she feels like becoming Robin is a way for her to gain reputation so she can defeat more significant foes. So instead of the way that, and this was also written by Bill Willingham, so it's part of the Robin run, and I'm really frustrated that it's never been collected in any of the War Games trades, because I think it really does give an additional layer of motivation for Stephanie wanting to become Robin. And I think it is legitimate to want to have more training, want to have more visibility, want to have more street credibility. Because as it stands in Robin 126 is definitely a lot more Steph is feeling hurt because she sees Tim being kissed by this other girl, and she's clearly having very bad communication issues with Tim. So there's just this whole dropped ball of communication going on throughout the entire issue. So if that were the only motivation, I would say it's sympathetic. I'm not like angry at Steph for that. But I think that if you know a little bit more of the backstory that almost no one has access to because it's in this magazine that's never reprinted, um, I think it does give her a lot more heroic um, motivation for becoming Robin. Now, Batman, we know from Donovan's interview with Chuck Dixon that he wanted to make Stephanie Robin for a full 6 months. So now that would be a truly long run as Robin. um, and editorial just refused to let him, refused to let him. And we know from interviews with Bill Willingham that he was the one who suggested to make Stephanie Robin because he knew Stephanie was going to die. Spoilers, Stephanie was going to die in War Games. So he said, let's make her Robin. Um, and at this time, Tim is not Robin because his dad found out. So there's a vacuum. Obviously, Tim was going to come back. But Willingham has said in a long YouTube interview that I do recommend people check out um, that once fans responded really positively to Stephanie, he wanted to continue with her as Robin because he loved the story of a veteran warrior, Batman, training a young squire like Stephanie into an elite warrior. And actually, when he returned to Batman 2 years ago with the Batman versus Big B miniseries, he had a whole bunch of people as Robin, but Stephanie was one of the veterans. And I thought that was a really fun callback to his frustrating time as Robin because editorial just really interfered with this whole run.
Alfred calls Batman out though, and Batman doesn't respond that, you're not doing this in order to get Tim back, are you? Do you think he is? What can we read anything into that silence and Batman not responding to that question?
I think that at this time, this is one of Batman's least sympathetic periods of being written. He's extremely manipulative. He's very cold. He's very distant. And he's spent the last 5 years basically being at odds with most of the Bat family for one reason or another, whether it's because of Bruce Wayne murderer or being brainwashed by Hush or just all this there's a bunch of stuff that's just gone very badly for Batman, and he has not reacted well. Um, my interpretation is that he did want to see if he could get Tim to come back, but that he wasn't putting all his eggs in that basket. He also knows that Stephanie is a capable crime fighter and wants to see what it would be like if she got direct attention and training. So I don't know if I could say I always saw this, but I certainly think now that he has plans upon plans as part of him being so manipulative and really cold right now, is that he has all these different motivations. And I personally don't think that it's a simplistic, oh, I just want to make Tim jealous. I think that is part of what he's doing, but I think there's also a part that is genuinely invested in seeing if Stephanie can be a partner.
But he already tried this in the past. So I do wonder what has changed, and all of a sudden I'm
With
going
a
to say
different
that
writer.
yes, but continuity. And I feel like he's a hypocrite because suddenly now Steph disobeying him is a positive trait. And Alfred actually called him out on that. He's like, well, this is the first time I'm hearing of it.
I will never. I mean, I have come to love Batman in the
Yes.
last let's see, 5 years since
Okay.
Tom King's run. Um, but I started reading Batman comics in 2005 with this story, and I hated Bruce for the next 13 years.
Okay.
So this Bruce is certainly full of things that I am happy to criticize. I think,
Okay.
as I said, I think it's more complicated than a simplistic, oh, he's only doing this to make Tim jealous. But I do think that's part of it. And I do think that's not very good.
Could you please state your name and also say Batman is a hypocrite?
Uh, my name is Ian, Ian Prime for longtime listeners. And Bruce Wayne as Batman has moments where he does hypocritical things.
Okay, that was very political, sir. Very political. I agree with your frustration. I think the reason why I was frustrated that Tim was mentioned in terms of why Stephanie has this desire to, be this type of hero is because we were in this sort of era in DC Comics where these female heroes are taking up the guise because of the male. And I think in particular, thinking about Barbara's origin story just seems to shift a lot. What was it because of Batman or was it not? And so I just wish that they would come to this decision on their own and not have a man involved. And so I do like that there is this alternative and that feels very much like Stephanie. Even, when Stephanie says, which this is something that we're encountering, guess we'll encounter it in this Batgirl that's coming up, as well as Batgirl's, the shadow of Cluemaster looms so large over her life as well. So she's almost, it feels like she never makes a decision for Steph. It's always because of a man, whether, she's really got to get out. She doesn't want to be her father, or, she loves Robin, Tim. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I wouldn't necessarily disagree, but I also don't find it as negative.
Okay.
Um, Partly because if you look at Batman, he does what he does because of the death of his parents, so a man and a woman.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think being motivated by a connection to another person is necessarily negative. I do think as a pattern, it can definitely be frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it depends on how you look at it. My second favorite DC character is Huntress, and I see her as very self-motivated.
Hmm.
She definitely had many male and female teachers and male and female motivations, but she's so driven. So maybe because she's so important to me, I don't see the pattern as strongly because I think there's these counter patterns. But
Okay.
and Black Canary too. I mean, she is more motivated by her mother than by her father.
Hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments for Robin 126?
Um, I love the design that Steph has. I just think her hair is amazing, and I think more people should champion that particular look as Robin.
Yes. You don't think that would get in the way, though, of what she needs to do?
That is irrelevant. This is a comic book.
Irrelevant. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay.
I mean,
Well,
if we're gonna talk about things that get in the way of things, then I'm gonna go full Edna mode, no capes.
okay. Well, that is true. That is very true. Okay, well, moving on to Robin 127, August 2004 cover date. Again, the publisher synopsis. The streets of Gotham can be unkind, and unfortunately for the new Robin, the mercurial Batman can be worse. Just how will she fare in her initial full blown adventure with the Dark Knight? Meanwhile, what's become of yesterday's Boy Wonder? Well, I will say, even though I give him a lot of slack, Batman, he does praise Stephanie for her improvisation during the fight with Tiger Moth, so he is kind to her. Question: do you think it's realistic that it takes so long and a newspaper for Tim to find out about Stephanie?
Well, there's an awful lot of terrible communication all the way through this three issues. So realistically, yes, it takes a ridiculous amount of time. It is consistent with everyone else just not talking to each other in this run, though.
But you don't think he would have heard about it like on the streets?
Well, remember that this is kind of the time when Batman is an urban legend, and so newspapers like there's no footage of Batman at this time, and there's no real photos, so it's all hearsay. And at this time, I think that it would have been. I mean, this isn't internet journalism where you're constantly trying to scoop each other with
Sure.
unsourced nonsense. Um, this is where print journalism was still the dominant form of news, and you had to have multiple sources. So in that sense, I think that it is perhaps less implausible.
Okay.
And also, not everyone has cell phones in 2004. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone in 2004. Um, so you wouldn't have all these people, tweeting, "I saw Robin. She's a girl now. What's that?" Like you wouldn't have that. It's a different
That's true.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only reason why the villainess knows about it is because she's tracking down all the leads on Robin, anyways. So
Right.
she has her ear to the ground. So Oracle does appear in this issue and she does some remote training, like it's COVID. with Stephanie, which is very interesting. And at first, I did a double take because I thought, does Stephanie know that Batgirl, that Barbara Gordon is Oracle? But actually, she does know that Oracle is Barbara because this in Birds of Prey number 40, when she was kind of on the team, but not really, that she was unmasked. They were literally in the clock tower. So I did that double checking so no one has to. So yeah,
I'm
she
trying
does
to
know.
remember if Steph interacts with Oracle during Cass's Batgirl run because I know they team up, but I can't remember if Barbara ever is there.
Oh, and sees the two of them together.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, except for what we see tonight, right?
right.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think that is all I. Oh wait. Yes, that is all I had on that one. Do you have anything to say about 127?
Not really. I really dig the dynamic between Bruce and Steph. I think that she does bring out good things in him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's silently amused by her, and they have some really great banter. Isn't this the one where she wants to drive the Batmobile? Yes, it is.
Oh,
And
yes.
she sticks out her tongue, and it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
but only when she's like 30 years old will she drive. But yeah, you can kind of see that because in the next one he says like, okay, your wish is my command, basically. We'll go in the bat plane. So he does listen to her. So maybe it's because he doesn't have other people and he doesn't feel like self-conscious or have pressure that now he's really giving her a chance. Maybe his heart was just not open. He didn't have an open mind last time.
Well, there's this whole arc actually in Detective Comics just before Steph becomes Robin, where Cass and Bruce really talk about Jason. And there's an
Oh, right.
explicit parallel drawn between Steph and Jason. So they're really drawing up the parallels between Steph and Jason, both really coming from a less affluent part of Gotham, and both being very rebellious, and both really loving being a hero just because they love the adrenaline, they love the excitement and adventure of it.
Mm,
Um, and so I think if you read these stories with that in mind, you see both why Bruce is he enjoys training her. He enjoys having her as a partner, but he also is terrified that she's going to die again. And unfortunately, as I have said before, it happens.
that's too bad. I've never read War Games, so this summer will be a real big deal for me.
We shall see what you think. It has lots of Oracle implications and
Wah,
effects.
wah. Okay. So then this is like I said, choose your own adventure. So we're switching off. It's a very tight timeline. I don't normally do this on this show. So we're going to, yes, Batgirl 53 Sisterhood. As we can see, pretty cool here. I like how Penguin and sorry, our heads are in the way. Penguin and Batgirl sort of merge into one another, and then Stephanie, as Robins generally do, bringing that light and the kind of the dopey happiness. And she has his monocle, and his umbrella is making up basically the logos there. And we've got Batgirl and Robin, but her hair is a bit more in control at this point in time because it's very
Which
frizzy.
is a shame. Her hair is awesome when
Oh
it's
my
just like
gosh.
spiked
I
ahead.
wonder, I need to know from Professor Cheapskate, because he's my chief hairstyle correspondent, what he thinks of her hair. So he's my go-to expert. No offense, but he's my go-to fashion expert. So we'll see what he has to say. Okay. So this is August 2004. I'll give an actual full synopsis since this is the Back Roll of the Oracle podcast. Writer Dylan Horrocks, penciler Dave Ross, inker Jesse Delperdang, and colors Jason Wright. And I guess trigger warning for political talks. Is this the one? Kind of. Yes, a bit. So not as heavy as it will be later on. Okay. A young girl named Melanie has a dream that she is being chased by a bat. Melanie wakes up and climbs out of bed carrying her penguin stuffed animal. She goes to her mother's room and asks where her daddy is. Her mother tells Melanie that her daddy is out tonight working again, and it doesn't seem like a happy thing. Batgirl takes down a group of thugs working for the Penguin. They try to shoot her with an experimental handgun they're smuggling, which is explosive. Batgirl asks Oracle for backup, and Batman sends Robin to assist her. Robin arrives and takes down the two thugs. She is competent. Hashtag not Batgirl's Stephanie Brown. Frank and Roy are those two thugs. Batgirl is surprised to learn that Robin is now her friend, Stephanie Brown. Later, Oracle explains that the Penguin has smuggled in a shipment of these weapons. They're supposed to be the most powerful handguns in the world, and he intends to sell them for profit. The girls decide to deal with it themselves instead of bothering Batman. Frank and Roy deliver the shipment to Penguin at his warehouse. Penguin has customers lined up, but knows that he can't move them with the bats on his tail. Roy insists that he cannot take another beating like that as he has a wife and kid. This gives Penguin an idea. Batgirl and Stephanie swing through the city. Stephanie explains that Tim Drake quit being Robin, and Batman asked her if she could do it instead. This is her dream come true, and she couldn't be happier. Oh, I'm so glad that it lasts such a long time. They break through the skylight. They break through the skylight of Penguin's warehouse, but he has already gone. Roy returns home to his daughter Melanie and asks to see her school bag. Batgirl and Robin take down Penguin's thugs until they eventually arrive at Roy. Roy is walking Melanie to school, and when Melanie leaves, they force him against a wall and interrogate him. Batgirl observes how scared Roy is, and Roy confesses that the Penguin is forcing his henchmen to use their children as couriers. At that point in time, Melanie delivers the gun to a man named Mr. Googer in a bar. Mr. Googer refused to pay this little girl, and she angrily threatens to call the police. Googer tells his associates to kill Melanie. Batgirl and Robin bust through the windows and take down all the thugs in the bar. They corner Melanie, and she pulls the gun on them. Robin comforts her and convinces her to put it down. Later, Batgirl and Robin arrive at the apartment of the Penguin and his girlfriend, Cindy. The Penguin decides to leave his girlfriend as she cannot pack quickly enough. Robin heavily beats the Penguin, so I guess this is what's tying into your Wizard magazine to a certain extent, and throws him into furniture while telling him what a scumbag he is. Batgirl eventually stops her from going too far. They watch the police arrest Roy while Melanie looks on. Stephanie remembers the first time the police arrested her father and states that she didn't know who to hate more, or I should say whom, her father, the police, or the whole world. Robin wonders what it will take to finally get men like the Penguin off the streets so they can't destroy any more lives. That came from the DC Wikia. Okay. Question. Let me find the page. Do you think Stephanie has abs like this?
Of course she does. She thinks the Huntress is awesome, and the Huntress does 700 sit-ups a day. So naturally, Stephanie is going to do a similar number.
Wait, but Stephanie has only been hardcore training for about 48 days, I think, with the wardrobe. You have the issue, so you'd be able to tell me. I don't know. I just don't know. I feel like this is unrealistic. And the reason why I really like Stephanie is because of how relatable she is. So I'm not saying don't give her any abs, but I'm saying I don't think they would look like this. But what is there a comparison that I can say with I don't know if I'll be able to see anything with Cass. Yeah, I mean Cass has her abs. I don't know. Does Steph have the same type of abs as Cass? Who knows? Okay.
Realistically, no, she's less
Yeah.
than a year. She's about a year out from having a child.
Oh, that's true.
So
That's all
no,
messed up. Yeah.
but I think she looks awesome.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, of course. Do you think it's realistic that Batman sends Stephanie to help Cass because he wanted her kind of attached to his side the entire time?
Well, I would definitely say that of all the Bat family members who are operating in Gotham, I mean, I guess that is just Batgirl, but Bruce has always really um trusted Cass in terms of her competence. And so I think that um I would say that of all the Bat family members, even the ones who aren't in Gotham, he would trust Cass to keep Steph safe if she needed to be kept safe. Although in
Hmm.
this story she doesn't. She handles herself quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. That she comes and really does, which shows, I think, the training and how serious she is. But she still has her flair and her positive attitude. You betcha, sister. So definitely keeping in line with her character. Are you
And she
sup-
also really functions as a Robin because when the little girl is so terrified, that is what Robin is for. Because Batman does love children, he does care about the people he saves, but he's intentionally being scary. And Robin is supposed to be that grin in the dark,
Mhm.
leading people to safety. And so I think
Absolutely.
she upholds the part that she's playing perfectly.
Yes. Let's see that scene. Which, of course, I mean, I think this might hit, Cass heavy, just that she was frightening this child, but it does obviously go back to that dream or the nightmare that Melanie had. But yeah, here you're speaking of, yeah, Robin being the one to take the gun away from the child and comfort her for sure. Yeah, I would say that this issue, I mean, since we're on this page, is relevant in in many ways. I think it's relevant to real life, specifically with gun safety. Just the fact that this child was about to use that, and also that she's acting as a mule there, and then relevant to the current run of Batgirl is just with their the constant struggle that they have with their parents when they have that conversation. Well, when she's really beating up Penguin, and then they have this end conversation of on the roof there about talking about her dad there. So,
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to say that I don't like the fact that Steph is so motivated by her dad because I think that it is very relatable. Not necessarily that everyone has a bad dad, of course, but
mhm,
that you can easily imagine, you can easily see yourself in that circumstance. It's very relatable. It's very, it provokes a lot of emotion, and a lot of writers do a lot of good work with that for Steph.
right. And I mean, Stephanie wouldn't be spoiler if her father didn't exist.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I
And
would say that Steph is definitely more famous than her dad.
by now, I would hope so. Yeah. And then, Barbara, of course, is influenced by her father as well. Um,
Hmm.
yes.
In a very different direction.
Yes, in a very different direction. This is, I liked this panel here because it's like the OG back rolls. Got the three of them, Cass and Steph and everything. Were you surprised how short this conversation was between the two of them about being Robin and what it means to her? That's just really one page, and that this isn't that she wouldn't come to her right away and talk to her like she does at the end. Cass seems to be the first person that Steph comes to when she's been fired. So is this shocking to you that she didn't come to Cass um, first and talk to her or have a longer conversation here? Or do you think this is just all appropriate and it's fine?
I think it's really tricky because I don't know for sure when all these things were being written. But I would imagine that trying to figure out how to fit Steph and Cass connecting earlier would have been prohibitive given the other storylines that had already been approved and the crossover that's coming up. So um, I'm not particularly bothered by that. It felt efficient, but also heartfelt, and it advanced the characters and the relationship. So it didn't. I kind of look at various titles connecting up in crossovers like this as being they have that extra filter of the extra brains of the writers who are writing, so they're going to be slightly different because of that. And there's also the fact that they're being written at all different times. They have different artists, um, so it doesn't make sense in universe. But I very much am reading them through the lens of this is this title, this is this author. I know this about comic production schedules. So if I were trying to like truly immerse myself in this is I'm living this world, yes, it would break my suspension of disbelief, but I don't approach it that way.
Okay. And we are We're going in a bit blind with this because with the Robin titles, we have her journal and her war journal entries and the day numbers and everything, but we're not given that here, which obviously different writers, but it would be interesting to see when this is happening. Given her competency, I feel like it is a bit later in her journals. Um, but yeah, I guess I know how close they are. It also ended on a really weird note because when she was fired the first time, the cast didn't really give her any sympathy whatsoever. So I don't know if Steph is a bit bummed about that, but I do like that they're actually talking about it. I think if this were to happen in this day and age, that cast might have brought up Tim because I don't know that either of them say like, "Oh, what does Tim think about it?" Because he doesn't really come to mind. It's just he is mentioned of quitting and everything. But it is nice. It's really sad knowing what's going to happen. I think if you don't know it, it's like, "Oh, this is so great." But looking out at how happy she is and knowing what's about to happen is terrible. It's almost worse to read it now. The father I felt like
I
was an
guess if you
yeah.
look at it, if you look at it from the perspective as War Games is the end of the story, I would agree. But to me, War Games is not the end of the story because she goes on to become Batgirl and then come back in Batman Eternal. Like she continues on. She is able to have many more adventures. And so I think of this as a time when it's like a bright shining moment for her. And the fact that it ended so painfully doesn't take away from that brightness.
Gotcha. Um, there was something I was going to say. Well, I guess the firing is also just very terrible.
Yes. As I don't know if I said this on the recording, but I refuse to buy that particular issue.
Yeah, well, now you have said it. Now you have said it. I felt like, could you see my screen?
I could not.
Oh, okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
My word, why wasn't it loading before? Okay, so now all of these things I was like pointing to, you should have said, still, I can't see anything. Okay, so here's the cover. And then what else did I talk about? The abs right
The
here.
abs.
There are the abs. And here are
She's been
the
working out
OG
hard.
Batgirls. Okay. And what else do we have? There's their conversation.
More
How fun.
abs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, take a shot every time. Oh, see, that's more realistic, like how you can see her stomach back there on that panel. Okay. I did want to talk about this father. I just thought that he was interesting because he just seems like a Joe Schmo, but he is clear. I guess there's a struggle. I don't know. It seems like they live in a pretty okay place, but we don't ever know people's financial struggles really. But he allows his daughter to be a mule. Perhaps he's too afraid of Penguin to do otherwise, but he seems to actually love his child. It's not like this bad guy who's like, "Oh yeah, just use my daughter however she needs to be used," because he's clearly concerned. But yeah, so an interesting character. I don't know why his wife hasn't left him yet, but again, we don't know what's going on between the two of them. Do you think he's just like a throwaway character? Is it more about Melanie in this case?
I mean, it's definitely more about Melanie.
Yeah,
He only appears. I would say Melanie appears a lot more, and the story's almost told through her perspective since it opens with her dream,
right.
and she gets so many perspective shots from on her face that her emotions and her perspective really sort of emotionally dominate the narrative. But I think I think he's a character with some nuance. I think Horrocks did a decent job building him up as much as he needed to be.
And then here's the gun control ad that I shared, and the final confrontation here, and that final uh, talk between the two of them. Of course, she doesn't leave happy. So now I've reshared everything that we missed before. Any other thoughts on Batgirl 53?
Um, Not really, other than it is odd that Damian Scott's on Robin, and this other artist is on Batgirl. Um, because of course Damian Scott was the original Batgirl artist for Cass, and
Mm-hmm.
so they
Mm-hmm.
flipped and then they crossed over, and it just is kind of funny seeing Damian Scott's character design in a different book.
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, well, out of 10 child mules, what would you give this particular issue?
I'd give it an 8.
An 8, you say? Okay. I'm going to go down a half step and say 7.5 out of 10 child mules. Okay. So, foreshadowing that final image, who knows? Who knows? So now we are moving on or moving back to, oh my gosh, we're moving back to technology. I'm telling you what. Robin. Whew. We're going to now Robin 128. Everyone's favorite issue of Robin if you're a fan of Stephanie Brown. Am I right, Ian? Your favorite
That is
issue?
not what I would say.
Oh, okay. You did have to think about it, though. You gave a pause. I appreciate that. September 2004 cover date. We have no image to show you. It's probably something that says Batman's a jerk, and Stephanie Brown is pointing to him, a la Kitty Pryde and Professor X. So, publisher synopsis: Tim Drake continues to adjust to life outside the Batcave while Batman and the new Robin face off against the deadly Scarab. Can the new dynamic duo stop this fearsome femme assassin from eliminating her ultimate target, the former boy wonder? Okay, again, even though Batman is in fact a jerk, he praises her again for planting the tracker, which was good job, Stephanie. So let's get down to it, okay? Should Stephanie have left the Bat plane to help Batman?
Here is where I approach this issue
Mm-hmm.
pretty much completely from an out of universe perspective.
Okay.
Um, because it just feels so artificially constructed to reach the mandatory editorial demand that Steph not be Robin when she dies. Because that was the thing is Bill Willingham's like, let me make her Robin, and Dan Dieter's like, well, she can't be Robin when she dies, and Bill Willingham's like, well, if you let me make her Robin, she's still gonna be a dead Robin, so suck it.
That's true.
Um, it does not make sense to
Mm.
me for Batman to fire Stephanie um, for disobeying him in the field when Dick, Jason, and Tim all did that many times. Um, I actually talked to Tim Seeley at C2E2 about this because he, in his miniseries Robins,
Ooh.
reapproached this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want it to be because Batman was being sexist, because he wants Batman to be more heroic than that. Um, Having listened to a lot of what Willingham says about why he wrote the run the way he wrote it, I am more inclined to see that he wanted to do these things, but then editorial said you have to get here. So he was just trying to get there, and it was very difficult and frustrating. Um, and having read Fables, which I do highly recommend, an excellent series that he wrote, 150, and now it's going to be 162 issues, with a lot of very powerful um, female heroines who are very complicated and dynamic and driven and have tons of agency. I don't think that it was Willingham's intention to say, oh, Steph was less capable and less worthwhile. And in fact, I get a sense that to some extent, Willingham was like, this was unfair. We're supposed to feel that it's unfair. Um, I'm not sure how much of that is because I feel it's unfair, and how much I think. But again, from listening to what he said, I do think that he was in a terrible position. Writing for the Batman books at this time was not fun, and I think he just kind of wrote what they told him to write, did his best, and then that's what we got.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I guess it's a perverted ring composition because he begins her hiring process saying, I like her. She disobeyed me. Not many people can do that. And then all of a sudden, I don't, you're fired. You disobeyed me. So it's interesting of, again, that man is a hypocrite. It, reading it this time, I do see how she muddied the fight a bit. But if someone is struck, like, I don't know that he was necessarily going to get out of it on his own. I mean, it's Batman, so maybe. But when you feel like someone that I don't know if she loves him or not. She certainly admires him, but someone that you care for and who is a father figure and a mentor is in danger, I think you're going to drop kind of reason of like, oh, he told me to stay here. I got to stay here. You're going to go and help somebody out. So,
Like, how heroic would we think Stephanie was if she just stayed in the Batplane?
yeah.
I mean,
I
yes,
don't
she's
think anyone
obedient
else would have.
and
Yeah.
she does what she's told. Very
Right.
heroic.
Yeah. And I think, change her place with Dick or with Tim, definitely
They
with
would
Jason,
Jason would absolutely do
100%.
that.
100%. Yeah. Babs would have. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just, yeah. So, uh, it's very sad. Do you feel like there's any room for grace in this business? Do you think Batman ever had any intention of keeping her around if we're in the story? Because I understand, taking away what we know is a trajectory, but do you think if it was so easy for him to cut her loose, did he really ever have the intention of having her long term? And then, yeah, is there any grace in this superhero business?
Um, I mean, it really depends. I think in universe, it makes most sense to have Batman driven by fear here. We know from that Detective Comics arc that I mentioned that he sees Jason in her. We
Mm-hmm.
know that he is devastated by Jason's death. He is still haunted by guilt and haunted because he loved Jason. He loved him dearly and he cares about Steph. There's an issue of Detective Comics in this sort of Steph as Robin arc where Steph is captured by Mr. Zaz and he is terrified for her. So you see that there's this real care and real concern for her. And I think that when she gets captured by Scarab here, that fear takes over and he's just unwilling to let another Robin die. Um, I don't think it's rational,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think it is understandable. Um, and I think that it's tragic because even though he wanted to keep her safe by firing her, obviously that the exact opposite happened.
And that's definitely his MO is to push people away.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean,
Especially at
it's
this
great.
time.
Yeah.
I think that's key to remember that this time is just a really dysfunctional, unhealthy Batman, Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's I mean, this is a really, this is an easy question. Is it a double standard? Is there a double standard here?
Again, it really depends on how much you're willing to lean on the why, on your interpretation of why Bruce does it. Bruce never says it's because you're a girl. Um, from my in universe interpretation of him being driven by fear of another Jason, I wouldn't say it's a double standard based on her sex. Um, I do think it's completely irrational. I do think it is completely inconsistent with how he treated Dick, Jason, and Tim. Um, so you really do have to struggle with why he's making the decision because it's not rational and it's not coherent. Um, so
Yeah.
some people certainly, I do think it would be reasonable to say it's a double standard because she's a girl. I don't think you can say that's the only possible interpretation.
Could you please state your name and say Batman is a jerk?
My name is Ian Prime, and Batman is a jerk.
Yes. Thank you. That was you weren't flip-flopping there.
Well, I
Um,
mean, this is Even in my most sympathetic version of this, he's a jerk.
Okay. Yeah. Huntress, I see a lot of similarities in like treatment of Huntress. And we know that Huntress, even I feel like you and I are both Huntress apologists. We do know also that there are some moral ambiguities with her behavior. So we do have to take that into consideration. I also like to joke. I mean, you listen to the show, so I constantly bring up whenever Cass has disobeyed Batman and she's still around. So that's in, I guess, defense of Batman not being sexist because, Cass is also a girl and she's disobeyed him, but she's still around. So yeah, it's just something about poor Stephanie. Mm-mm-mm. Any other thoughts on this issue?
With all my mental gymnastics and all my attempts to be as fair as possible, I still am unwilling to buy this issue. I
Sure.
hate it.
I understand. I understand. I don't own Killing Joke, so I feel ya. Do you feel
Neither do
like,
I.
yeah, if you are a Stephanie Brown fan or stan, as the kids say, do you think that
The 20-year-old
you,
year old kids.
I, do you think that you would recommend this to them and that you should read this particular run of her time as Robin, or do you just no, you're fine without it?
So again, this is one of the very first comics I ever read as a
Mm-hmm.
comics fan. And obviously I turned out an enormous Stephanie Brown fan.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you should avoid it. I do think it's very painful. Especially when you get to war games. It's extremely painful. But again, I think I don't love Stephanie Brown because she's perfect. I don't
Mm-hmm.
love Stephanie Brown because she always makes the right decision. I love Stephanie Brown because I see parts of myself in her. And I see that. I mean, who hasn't had an authority figure treat you unfairly? I'm very sympathetic to Stephanie Brown in this situation. And I think that, as I said before, I think that the brightness of her being Robin, the joy of her interaction with Batman, and her showing her competence and showing her strength, um, is more than worth the darkness, especially since the darkness is not the end. You have to remember she goes on. If you say, well, I'm gonna stop at War Games and that's it, then no, of course I wouldn't recommend that. But if you say I'm gonna read War Games and then I'm gonna read Brian Q. Miller Batgirl, I'd say yes, because
Yeah.
this gives a huge amount of context to why Brian Q. Miller Batgirl was so powerful because Steph is proving herself.
Mm-hmm.
She is able to stand on her own 2 feet and she's able to slap Batman across the face.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, I mean, her journey is very similar to Barbara Gordon's in the fact that there was a nadir to it. And then she's picked up a nadir that was forced upon us and the writers. And then she's pulled out of that and become something greater, to be sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the first time that I've, I think read that whole thing, to be honest. I mean, I've known about it. I've known, pages and had discussions on it, but never, I think, read it. So that was very interesting. So now she's fired. So now we're going to move over to Batgirl 54, where she will appear again. And I will say that I've waited years to do it, but we're going to cancel Cassandra Cain right now
Well, I
in this
do I do
issue.
want to point something out from my hard copy of this
Yes.
comic. Like,
Well,
what
is
is
that
this?
Halle Berry?
What is
Is
this?
that a PlayStation game?
Yes, it is.
Okay, the Catwoman PlayStation game based off of Halle Berry. Well, I don't know.
Who thought this was a good idea?
Oh, okay. So this is Batgirl 54 cooking the books. You can see the image. Am I sharing the screen? You can see it?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
We can see Batgirl in the information rage. and I'm not sure what's going on down here with these. It's letters. Yeah, we're gonna get into it big time. I wish Donovan were here because I'd be putting him on the racks. And then we see Steph going up against something, an automaton, a synthetic, who knows? Okay, 2004 of September is the cover date. Writer Dylan Horrocks, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delperdang, colorist Jason Wright. Simon Sherwood prepares for the signing of his new book, The Mars Conspiracy. There is a huge line for this greatly anticipated novel. They open the bookstore, and his first customer is a giant robot in a trench coat. The robot kills Sherwood with a shotgun hand, burns the store down, and calmly walks away, as all robots do. Batgirl later arrives at the scene and tells Oracle there were no survivors. Oracle tells her that the author, the editors, and even the printer are dead. This robot has destroyed every single copy of the Mars Conspiracy. Oracle realizes that a copy of the book has been sent to the public library. Batgirl is sent to find the book, though she doesn't want to go there. Batgirl hates the library. Hashtag cancel Cassandra Cain because she can't read. Again, hashtag we need to cancel her. We don't like people who can't read. Oracle scolds back. You go with me. You go with me. Oracle. we despise illiterates. Oracle scolds Batgirl because Oracle used to
I,
be
I
the
want to make it
head.
clear this is Stella. This is not Ian
No, that's
Prime who
okay.
is
His
saying this.
face is on, which means he condones everything I say. So Oracle scolds Batgirl because Oracle used to be the head librarian. This is a personal front. Batgirl meets a new librarian named Emily who agrees to help her in the search. The library's security cameras go dead. The robot enters the building and Batgirl descends to challenge it. The robot begins blasting away at everything and Batgirl realizes it's not human, obviously. The robot sees Emily holding the Mars Conspiracy and begins targeting her. Batgirl carries Emily out of the way and Emily explains that the book contains information on that particular robot. It's a cybernetic assassin called Project Mars that Simon Sherwood helped design. Batgirl wants to leave, but Emily insists that they must stop Project Mars from destroying the library. Batgirl does not understand why Emily cares so much about the library. Hashtag cancel Cassandra Cain, which is just books. Look at her. Look at her. Emily angrily insists that the library contains irreplaceable information. Absolutely. Emily should be the next Batgirl. Batgirl tries to distract Project Mars. Emily reads the Mars Conspiracy to look for a weakness in his design. Batgirl battles the robot until Emily finds its self-destruct code. But unfortunately, before Emily can read the word aloud, the robot shoots Emily dead. The word is peace. Batgirl picks up the book, but because she's illiterate, she cannot read the words. Batgirl tries to explain the word to Oracle, and Oracle is furious to realize Batgirl doesn't even know the alphabet. And Oracle asks, how can Batgirl be so stupid? And Batgirl tells her that she's trying really hard to learn, but she can't. Oh, we're going to get into this. We are going to get into this. Batgirl tricks the robot into reading its own self-destruct code. There is a massive explosion, damaging the library and destroying the last copy of the Mars Conspiracy. Later that night, Oracle apologizes to Batgirl for getting emotional about the library and calling her stupid. Batgirl refuses to talk to her, puts on her mask, and leaves. So they've broken up.
I do want to
Except
point out that actually the librarian wasn't killed.
she wasn't?
Nope.
Are you sure?
Yep, it says Emily's going to be fine.
Oh, well, I'm gonna. Well, on what page?
The issue we were just at where Barbara apologizes at the
Oh,
very
that
top.
pit. Oh, really? I mean, what's
Yep.
if you look at it? Look how is that woman not dead? It's a direct
Well, we
shot.
don't see a bullet hole.
I see. Oh my gosh.
See,
Okay.
right there.
Emily's going to be fine. Some mild concussion. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Well, I'm so sorry. So even I am at times illiterate. You can cancel me. Okay. Let's see here. Da 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 da. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Stephanie Brown approaches Batgirl, a spoiler, and explains that Batman recently fired her as Robin. Spoiler thanks Batgirl for her friendship. She then tells Batgirl that no matter what Batman says, she will not give up crime fighting. Spoiler is determined to prove Batman wrong about her. Batgirl returns to her apartment alone. She pins the page fragment that said peace to her wall and stares at it sadly because she can't still read it. So this is the 54th issue of Batgirl. Okay. Ooh, now first of all, is there a book that you've despised so much that you would terrorize all who've read it and created it?
No. There's a book that I have sworn that if anyone gives it to me, I will burn, but there's no book that I will
Oh,
terrorize people for reading.
which book is that?
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Really? Pride and
Yes.
Prejudice and Now, I have in fact read that novel, but I won't get. I mean, I don't gift it to anyone, but I just want you to know that I've read it. Have you read it?
Well, as I said, I don't terrorize people. I hate it so much that I will burn it if someone
Okay,
gives it to me.
I see. Well, okay, I could have been your first
And that's
mistake.
because I love the original Pride and Prejudice, and I find what Seth Graham Smith did to be
Oh,
intensely lazy, and I despise it.
oh well. I mean, then you wouldn't like Jane Slayer,
Nope.
or any of the Jane eroticas that I read. I will
I
say
heard about that episode. I was like, "Ooh, big eyes! What happened here?"
that was they copied and pasted and then they changed things up. That is very interesting. It is very interesting. I don't recommend that episode. You didn't listen to it, did you?
I can't remember. I
Okay,
might
well,
have.
you oh my gosh. I told people not to listen to it, and yet it's probably my highest download. It's ridiculous. I had to do it, but I just was like, don't listen to this. It's
You
fine.
should have just embraced it.
Yeah. Well,
You should have started the Jane erotica
the
OnlyFans.
Jane Erotica OnlyFans. Let's see here. I
That's a
really
joke. You
didn't.
shouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, I don't think I will. I really don't like The Awakening by Kate Chopin, and I don't like Everything is Illuminated by oh shoot, I can't remember his name. And I also really didn't like uh what was that called? Some Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. Of the three of them, I don't know that I would necessarily terrorize anybody. But every time Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close pops up and Tom and I are in the same room, quote unquote room together, we just like our ire rises. His ire rises higher and more quickly than mine, but we always if it comes up in comments or something like that on required reading. So those would probably be the only ones. Maybe anything by Ernest Hemingway, but not, yeah, this was pretty intense here to be sure. Okay. Okay. Now, do you believe that Cass should be canceled because of her hate speech against libraries and books?
No, because as we know from the Batgirl's title, Cass believes that reading is fundamental.
Yes, but that's a different Cass.
I believe it's the same Cass in my heart.
And that she's grown.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Through her friendship with Barbara and Stephanie.
yeah, I suppose I can get on board with that. But this just I could not believe where this vitriol was coming from. We look at this nose sounds awful. Oh my gosh, where is this coming from? How could Barbara not have rubbed off on Cassandra more than just this?
Well, it's a bit hard to read the tone here. It's one of the reasons I'm not the biggest fan of this Batgirl costume because I can't see her face.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if she's trolling Babs or if she genuinely hates reading.
Well, her lips are puckered and it does look like she has a scowl on.
Yeah.
So,
Either way, if she's trolling Babs, she's being very good at it, which is
yes.
hilarious. if she's serious, that's interesting because I don't remember her being this resistant to reading. Maybe it's
Yeah.
something where I mean, Cass's character is one who accepts nothing less than greatness from herself. I mean, that's the whole point of her first arc, where she's like, I will promise to fight Shiva to the death if I can be Batgirl for a year when she loses her ability to read body language.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very Achilles, you know, live short, burn bright, die young. That's her whole mindset. And reading, especially with the way her mind has been broken by her father and her upbringing, and then messed up further by this mutant, um, it's hard. It is something that requires a lot of pain, and she doesn't know. It's not that she knows that there's this great thing at the end of all the struggle. For all she knows, she could always just hate reading, even if she gets good at it. We know better than that because we know she does come to love reading. But I think you could, sympathetically reading this, feel that Cass is has given up on herself because she thinks that she will focus on what she's good at, and she just has all this negative experience built up around failing to read. She
Right.
hates to fail, and so she just is going to say, "Well, I choose not to try anymore."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you have to read that into it because she doesn't say it, and it's not really built up.
Sure. Yeah, I think if the previous issue were a PSA for gun control, this is certainly a PSA for reading. And hopefully, long-term fans will know that I was completely joking about, getting rid of all the illiterate people. If you've just hopped on to watch this, then you probably think that I'm being serious. But we do know, I mean, there are a lot of things I can talk about, obviously, because I do have a question about whose fault is it that she still can't read. But it is something, even though she's more of a young adult, that, kids, and this is true of really any subject, but reading, that they do get really frustrated when they're unable to do it. They don't meet these challenges. Some of them lack grit to really push through, and they just feel down on themselves and and then they don't progress, and then they just want to stop trying, and it's easier to stop trying than to try and fail, or make small strides. And so that's why our job as educators is to really, of course, direct an explicit instruction in lots of different things: spelling and vocabulary and fluency and comprehension, all of that stuff. And also to really be with them and have a relationship with them, and through that relationship there's trust. And so if you're saying, like, you can do hard things, they will believe that they can do hard things. Or if you're encouraging them, if you have that relationship, they believe that that encouragement is real, which is why it is disheartening when Barbara calls her stupid. I mean, it's a bit of like a, I'm making it more direct than it actually is, because she does say, "How stupid can you be?" I think is, yeah, for God's sake, Cassie, how stupid can you be, rather than actually calling her stupid. But this is like they had this strong relationship, and now it's like you've really fractured it, because there was all that trust, and everything that Cass may have believed about her stuff, about herself in regards to reading and writing, is now, it's now solidified. So that is the big bummer. So if we're canceling Cassandra on this episode, we might as well cancel Barbara Gordon as well.
I was wondering about this. This is a hard issue. This is a
Yeah.
huge relationship moment for Barbara and Cassandra. Like, how do you feel about Barbara in this moment?
Yeah. I feel like in my mind, no amount of pressure would push her to call Cassandra stupid. But I think a lot of it comes from Barbara's relationship with libraries, and the fact that this does mean a lot to her. There's a life on the line, and similar to Emily, there are all these things going on. So she just like loses her cool, and we don't see Barbara lose her cool very often. And I think when it happens, there are usually some bodies in its wake because of how powerful it is. So I am disappointed. I feel like maybe it's out of character, but maybe it's in character. And I think we just have to say that this happened and now some bad stuff is yeah. Um gosh. I wonder how long it takes. How long would you if you were in the place of Cassandra, how long do you think it would take to potentially forgive Barbara for this? I mean, Barbara owns up to it and apologizes. Well, does she actually say I'm sorry? I always like to find that. Does she say? Yeah, she does say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
mean, I know the answer to this question, so um,
yeah. Well, I mean, you personally, if someone called you stupid or insulted you in a way that you have insulted yourself internally for years, how long would it take you to build back that trust and forgive?
it would rankle. It would rankle for a
Yeah,
while. Um, yeah, it's definitely like I said, this is a very heavy moment for this
yeah.
relationship, and it I feel like people don't talk about this issue as much as they should.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Partly because it was never collected. It's weird. I think I guess reading it, the Stephanie stuff is only 2 pages at the end, or even just 1 page at the end of the issue. So it doesn't directly tie into War Games,
Mm-hmm.
but it's never collected. It jumps from Batgirl 53 to Batgirl 55 in War Games. And this issue is always left out. And it's not in the three Cassandra Batgirl trades that exist right now. So I think part of the reason people don't talk about it is
They
very few
just don't
people have
know.
actually read it
Yeah.
comparatively, because it's just not accessible. But I wish they would because it's the kind of meaty issue where there's not really I don't think Barbara or Cassandra are really in the right here.
Mm-hmm.
I think whether you feel more sympathetic to one or the other really depends more on which character you feel more sympathetic to. Um, I personally can't pick between
Mm-hmm.
these two. I feel really, I, I feel for both of them intensely because I love both characters intensely.
Yeah.
Now, if either of these characters are in conflict with Steph, obviously I'm going to feel more sympathetic to Steph. But
Sure.
with these two, they're kind of equal in my heart. Um,
Yeah. And I mean, Barbara is the mother there, so we've got and Cass has been disappointed by and hurt by Batman in the past, but I feel like this cuts in a different way.
yeah.
And one of my questions was whose fault is it that Cass still can't read? Because she does say, I tried and all of this stuff. And I feel like it's both of their faults, to be honest. She
I mean,
said she tried.
fundamentally, the real person whose fault it is David Kane.
Oh, sure.
Um, it's
But she got
hard to
over
say
the
because
yeah.
we don't see those tutoring sessions. We don't see Cass failing or succeeding, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen like some very early on.
Right, but we
When
haven't
when
seen
that
them in the last 20 or so issues.
no. And so and Babs that which is why partially I think it is Babs's fault because partially I said because it seems like now she is saying this is like Cass's responsibility to be studying on her own and at least studying the alphabet because she doesn't even know like what she's been doing. She knows that she's been training martial arts, but she's like, "Well, what have you been doing with the ABCs? You haven't." So she needed to be again, this is how like, my
So
literacy
you
brain.
think because we didn't see them, they didn't happen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure I would necessarily assume that, but I don't think it's unreasonable.
Well, if she doesn't I mean, Babs is shocked she doesn't even know her alphabet. If they had been trained, if they'd been working together, Babs would know that Cass doesn't know her alphabet, right? Um, if you are wondering about why can Cass speak but not read or write, this is a common thing that people get messed up on, but speaking is more easy than writing and reading. It's just different processes, and it's often more difficult to acquire reading and writing and not speak. And as you know, language is, we're sort of born with it. It's more of a biological thing, but we have to be trained with reading and writing. And again, I'm going to grad school, and literacy is one of my focuses there, or foci. And I think it is partially Batgirl's fault because, yeah, she has been training. She says that she's tried, but I think that she's given up. So I think that she's stuck with something that she knows she can do and she can do well, but the thing that she can't do well, she's decided to kind of push aside. So I think there's an equal issue with both of those. I think that Cass will come to forgive Barbara, but I don't think she'll ever forget this. And if I were Barbara, I think I would never forget it either. It's because those sorts of things like always stick with me. So yes, this is pretty rough. Pretty rough.
It's heavy.
Yeah. Um, what do you feel like was the oh well, I guess before that, if we talk about do you think here we go. Do you think that Cass was the first person that Steph told? I assumed it was, but do you think so?
I mean, this is the only issue we really have before we jump straight into war games. So I would say yes, I
Okay.
believe so. Because she's just not really talking to Tim at all during this time
Mm,
period.
yeah. And final question is just what would you say would be the point of this issue? Like, what was its purpose, do you think?
It's
What
to drop this bomb in
Okay.
the Barbara and Cassandra relationship.
I mean,
I think
that's what
that's
it
the point of this
seems,
issue.
but why now? Is it because we've had this contentious Batgirl and Batman situation? So now it's like, well, let's give it to the mom a bit too.
So my answer is based on what happens next. Do you want me to answer that
Oh.
question?
Um, no then.
Okay. I think it will become fairly clear as you keep reading.
Okay, as to what's going on. Okay. Yeah.
I do want to ask a question. We're all
Oh,
about
please, yeah.
dropping the hot current events takes here, and I thought it was very amusing that this villain is a robot, an artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Could we say it is robot GPT?
Oh, interesting. Maybe. Maybe. Oh, Chat GPT. I didn't know anything about Chat GPT until I guess it was late February, and someone said, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And now it's just like I don't like to think about it. Plagiarism. That's all I have to say about it. Um,
Yeah, if I were still teaching, I would just make all my students write their essays in front of me.
yeah.
No more typed essays.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Well, Latin, hopefully it'll help me out a bit, but any other thoughts on this issue?
I really like Rick Leonardi. I think it's kind of funny because Rick Leonardi did a ton of really good issues in this Batgirl run, but then he did Convergence Batgirl, and I don't know what it was about that, but that was a messy book art wise.
Mm.
But this issue looks great. I love he's got
Yeah.
kind of an anime style with all the big eyes
Oh
and
yeah.
very appealing designs. Not like super interesting layout wise or action wise. It's kind of just panel, panel, panel.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Wow. I'm surprised Steph even came back to the clock tower after that. I would have not wanted to be near her. Oh, I did have one final question. Her posting up this piece where it says peace, this piece of paper, do you think it's just because of everything that went down, or do you think also this word means something to her?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think that clearly there is a desire in Cass's heart for peace, and that's supposed to be sort of poetic, but it's also very clearly a totem of just the damage that Barbara and Cass have done to each other's relationship. Um,
Absolutely.
it's heavy,
It is heavy. Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that's it's nicely done. I think that Horrocks did a good job building to this damage and then letting us feel that damage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Out of 10 smoking librarians, what would you give this?
Um, I'd say 7.5.
Okay, I would agree with you and say 7.5 out of 10 smoking librarians. And as a little capstone, just remember that I am a proponent of combating illiteracy, but I am not a proponent of getting rid of illiterate people. So that was all just a joke, just in case people are really concerned. I hopefully people would know by now that that would not be something that was coming out of my mouth. But I've learned so much in my literacy courses that I look forward to getting back in the classroom and seeing what I can do and how I can help people both in Latin and English. Okay, well, let's see here. We do have some listener emails, and by we, I mean me, because people did not write to Ian Prime here. First up for
How dare they?
YouTube. Could you imagine if they started writing things to you? First, I mean, please do. And, after this one, if you have any questions for him, for the YouTube comments. So, the episode 231, part one, Donovan asked if I was wearing new glasses. No, I was not. Also part one. Oh, you you commented. So let's read this while you're on here. Yeah, I should have gotten you to read this. Okay, so from you. So this issue of Birds of Prey gets a lot of controversy for both the slut shaming and Huntress sleeping with Josh. I actually really love it because I think that the Bat family is really in shambles at this stage after several years of Bruce being completely dysfunctional. This is building up to Pete Backjerk era with War Games, as we'll soon see. Huntress, in particular, has been ostracized and devastated by so many ups and downs and setbacks and failures. I see this issue as Helena's absolute low point, her rock bottom, and she sleeps with Josh because of her complete lack of self worth. However, I think that it makes perfect sense for where she is as a character, and I love where she goes from here with my whole heart. Side note, previous commenter is correct. I missed whatever that was. Arthur was responsible for Steph's kidnapping and serious endangerment in Robin 15 through 16, for which she beats him down pretty seriously in prison with the guards' full approval. I do think that New 52 slash Rebirth slash Infinite Frontier slash Dawn of 8 DC Arthur is more violent towards his family. He did, after all, try to kill Steph multiple times in Batman Eternal. Oh, I forgot about all that.
He
I
shoots at
also,
her a lot.
yeah, I also do buy the quote, Lazarus serum brought him back wrong, end quote explanation. It didn't feel like a cheat to me. And the body armor issue in the Dark Knight film series, Lucius says that Batman's armor will stop most things except a straight shot, and Steph got shot fully straight in the chest. So I think it makes sense that the bullet penetrated her armor, just as Harvey's shot in the Dark Knight film penetrated Bruce's abdomen armor. That's a good comment there, Ian. That's a good comment. Yes. No, yeah, I agree with that. I still don't really like Huntress sleeping with Josh, but
We're not supposed to like it.
yeah, I know. And I but
She's
I understand
feeling
your
terrible about herself. That's why she does it.
well, we'll see. Well, is the next arc, which is like 6 issues long, is it pretty good with her being back in a teachery role as a do you remember this arc?
Okay, next arc is not. Is it Sensei and Student?
No. She's
No.
apparently going undercover as a teacher.
Yes.
Hopefully it'll pick her back up.
It's a real roller coaster. I do love it.
Okay.
But in terms of where she goes next, I'm talking about the next 20 issues.
Okay.
So it's a very long term arc. It really pays off if you read the whole thing. But the next arc, there's a lot of positives, but it's a roller coaster.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like Birds of Prey is turning into Huntress focus, just like Batgirls with Stephanie Brown focused. Okay, for part two, we have Enigma. Enigma has returned. I think personally, the reason they chose Steph again was for Cass to relive one of her darkest moments. I'm trying to think of context?
I think it's
Just in general,
Steph
focusing on
dying
Steph?
again.
Oh, okay.
Real cast
Okay.
reliving Steph dying the first time.
Okay. I see. I mean, literally, panel for panel, this issue is like Cass reliving losing a dear friend, Clayface back in Tech Rebirth. That had to be no coincidence. Everything was synced perfectly. Even Babs in that pose with the sniper rifle again was exactly as is. The only difference was Cass found a way. The method she preached to Kate way back then worked. I think that's why the writers went with what they went with. Same with Cass staying by Steph's side as she was cured and slept. It was poetic from when Steph did it for Cass way back in Batgirl Volume 1, number 26, though she took out the Shiva groupie first. I agree Cass should have been man batted, but I think the reason was for Hatter to play up this nightmare scenario. Also, I kind of want to think, theory wise, that Spellbinder and Tudor were students of Hatter, hence why he targeted the Batgirls. This whole subplot began back after number 6, which means Hatter began planning and targeting them since then. Spellbinder and Tudor had Hatter Tech and had given Jervis and Spellbinder and Tudor had Hatter Tech and gave Jervis, I'm not sure what the phrasing is here. Spellbinder and Tudor had Hatter Tech given, I guess, Jervis was splicing various tech these last issues. There's reason to suggest he was the real brains behind the two. Any thoughts on that theory? Mad Hatter's been the big bad the entire run of Batgirls.
No, it doesn't. This felt like a one-off to me, a one-off
Okay.
with connections, but not like the culmination of all the stuff that's gone before.
Okay.
So I can see the theory and I can't disprove it. I mean,
Yep.
because you can prove very few things in comics,
Yeah.
but I don't personally think it makes structural sense.
Okay. And then finally, from my Earth 2 BFF, Shayna, on 231, she says, BFF Stella, it is interesting that Gotham Knights made Stephanie Brown seem a lot like Barbara. The same thing happened in CW's Batwoman. The Stephanie Brown in that show even had red hair and developed a crush on Luke Fox. Rather infuriating, really, for many reasons, and not fair to either Steph or Babs as a character. A lot is going on in Birds of Prey number 68. I think the issue definitely suffers from being of a time, early 2000s, when there was still a lot of slut shaming and it was common for women to be portrayed as always fighting over men. I think Helena is treated so unfairly by Donna and to a lesser extent Babs. I actually really like Helena in this issue. She's trying. She wants to be a part of this team. She wants a better reputation. And of all people, Dinah is going to slut shame her. There are a lot of cheap shots taken at Helena by both Dinah and Babs, unfortunately. Despite all of the unfairness towards Helena, I did like the idea of Barbara bringing them all together to debrief. I think her wording about, quote, making rough decisions in the field has two aspects to it. Number one, it reflects Barbara's controlling nature and dependency on planning. And oh no. And number two, it acknowledges the shaky ground they are all standing on as a new team. The execution could have been better for sure. Less slut shaming and less focusing on the men in their lives. However, I think this is the beginning for Barbara as a team leader. In this scene, she shows an understanding of how important it is to make space for the interpersonal conflicts that may exist on a team and hopefully their resolutions as well. Barbara is shown to be pretty proactive in that regard in 68. She wants to air out grievances and get everyone on the same page. She goes to her dad for advice and she supports Dinah and Helena in their lives outside of crime fighting. It's great A plus leadership. In regards to Helena going on her date with Josh, I always took it as a self insert fantasy for the average male reader. Ian, is that you? Especially Helena sleeping with him. Maybe Simone was advised to put something like this in to attract more male readers. It's hard to be certain. Regardless, I did think it was admirable for Helena to honor her word and go out with the guy. She could have easily blown him off without any adverse consequences. Again, I think it speaks to her trying to be better. That being said, she lets the date go on way too long for no reason I can infer, which is why I wonder if it is supposed to be some kind of meta commentary or lure for male readers who drool over and fantasize about dangerous, powerful female superheroes. Yeah, shag. And I can't help it. I love the cover for 68. Josh is a bit of an eyesore, but Greg Land is such an amazing artist and he makes all our leading ladies look so good. And then finally on Batgirl's number 16, I'm not sure I have anything to say that you haven't already said yourself. It's too bad the series couldn't have had equal focus on Cass and Babs in addition to Steph. The imbalance is really apparent now that we know the series will end in a few issues. I'm definitely curious to see how this will conclude and what Steph and Cass's relationship will be by the end. Stay safe out there, Shayna. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of said my own thoughts about the
Sure,
Birds of
sure.
Prey issue.
Yep.
I stand by those 100%, and
Okay.
if I were in conversation, I would try and tease out some of these things. I honestly, I think that the slut shaming feels realistic, and I
Okay.
don't think I know that Simone's not endorsing it.
Mhm.
I think that this is how people, really powerful, um, but also, full of trauma heroines would treat each other. And I don't think it's necessarily of its time. I think the choice to spend as much time on it may have been of its time, but I think that's how people are. And I think that trying to hide that and trying to pretend people are always acting perfectly, I can sort of see the aspirational nature of that intent, but this feels real. A lot of the reason people love Gail Simone run on Birds of Prey is because these three women feel so real. They don't feel idealized, they don't feel fake or self-inserty. They're real, they're flawed, they're passionate, they're admirable, they make mistakes and they inspire us. Um, so I disagree that it's just a dated comic. I think that's a to me that feels like a dismissal and not really engaging with what's going on.
Okay. Uh, just, for the audience to know, I'm trying to equalize all things. So I've been calling Donovan a skank. So I'm really trying to make it equitable so that males are also being held accountable. So, I mean, if you've seen some of his images, you would call him that too. Uh, thanks always for writing in or posting on YouTube. You can always write in backrolloracle@gmail.com. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're actually going to look at Backrolls number 17. And just given the time that we are recording, I have no modern quickies, so no Nightwing. But first, there's going to be some Zaius' Radio Hour, and it is featuring from their new album, With Love From, Sunchoke by Ali and AJ. See you soon.